Hello, Mr. Dorf. Figured I'd run you through the simulating dice roll activity really quick. The first four questions, the one that they'll have to worry about actually doing would be number two, which is to use the ram between command to actually create the 10,000 rolls, which carries over to number 5 and 6 in terms of finding the relative frequency and then comparing the results from what was expected in number 4 to what they actually find out in terms of the probability in number 6. So to run that rand between function, it's really simple. You just get click in a cell, you go do an equals rand between, and I want my bottom number to be 1, top number is going to be 6, hit enter, boom, it gives it to me. I'm going to run this for you about 100 times as opposed to 1,000 just to save myself some time. So you can just click and drag down to your desired amount. And I got 100 rolls, which is fine for me. And it's simulation rolling those dice. So the kids will first complain about having to drag it 10,000 times. Just tell them to zip it and to do it. It doesn't really take all that long. Then what I'm going to do, if you notice, every time I type something in and hit enter, it re-simulates the entire thing. So make sure your students don't write anything down in terms of frequency until they complete the entire parts of the lab. So for instance, don't let them write down their results that they actually have from their simulation in column A until they've done their count if functions for all of 1 through 6. Okay? Do not do anything until they write, or do not write anything down until you simulated all these 6 things. So from there, to get the number of times, for instance, that a 1 shows up, you're going to use, and it says this in the directions, is to use the count if function. And I tell them to type it in. In this case, it'd be A1 to A100 for me. For them, it'll be 10,000. And then behind that's the criteria. That's, well, what do you want Excel to count? Well, we want to count the number ones. Again, it's going to retrial everything. So if you remember before, there was a 1 in A1, now there's a 4. Okay, so now there's a roll of a 4. So we got 1s come up 16 times. I'm going to do that for each of the other 6. Now, you can type this in the same way each time, and maybe for your students, maybe it's a good idea they do, just to get used to the function. But you could literally, I'll show you this after 3, just to maybe save a little bit of time. You can actually grab that function and drag it, and it redoes it. But then after the 3, when you go to here, you got to change your criteria numbers to what you wanted, because it's still calculating the 3. So change that to a 4, 5, and then a 6. So once they do this, if we add them up, and you can talk to your students about this, it should give us a sum of 100. Okay. At this point, I would have them write down those numbers. Okay. And then they can calculate the probability based on the relative frequency, which will be, each of these numbers over 100. Okay. Very simple. All right. So that gets you through number 6. Now, when they do 2 dice, when they do the 2 dice part of this, I'm going to open up really quickly a new sheet if I can. Well, actually, I'll just do it over here in column F. When they do 2 dice, they're going to roll, you have to roll each of the dice separately. Okay, so for instance, column F for me is going to be die 1 and column 2, or I'll call it, you know what I'll do? I'll call it red die, green die, just for the sake of the fact that there's two different dice. I'm going to do the same thing as I did in column 1, which equals ran between 1 and 6. I'm going to do a equals ran between 1 and 6 for this green die. What the students are going to tend to want to do is to say, well, hey, I just need a random number between 2 and 12. And what they find out, and in the directions after number 10, it says that you need to separate them into 2. It basically breaks it down for them into what columns they need. But you can't do that because it makes these outcomes equally likely. And as you and I understand, rolling 2 dice to get different sums, they're not equally likely to happen. So we need to roll those dice separately. All right. Then from there would be our sum of the 2 dice, which you could type in equals F2 plus F, or F2 plus G2. Or if you just use your auto sum function, it'll guess on what you want to add together. And there you go. So we got a sum of 9. What we're really going to care about is this column, but we need to run through these the same way. So I'm just going to run these down about 30 times. Again, instead of the 10,000, just to save myself time. And then you're going to do the same thing here with the count if function, but in this case, they'll be counting up all the way down to 12. And they'll use the count if function just as they did here again. And then from that, you can have them build the sample space. They can establish that they're not equally likely outcomes. They'll be able to see that. And they should see a pattern. As we get closer and closer to 7, our frequency should get larger and larger or more frequent. And as it goes away, it should get less and less as you get closer to 12 or 2, your extremes. All right. Hope that helps you. And let me know if you have questions, man. All right. Thanks.